Well, it's time now for Grow in English with the News, your free, simple, and interesting study of English by looking at pronunciation and words that may be new to you to help you grow in English. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Coming from the southern United States, I'm your host, Paul, and today's story is coming from Japan, an interesting fellow by the name of Morimoto, and he has a very interesting job where he says he's doing nothing. We'll get to that in just a moment, but first, this is our first broadcast, and we're so happy to have you with us today and grow in English together with today's news, and hope that you find something very interesting as we go through this very short video discussing some stories in today's news. I am not new to tutoring. I've been doing it for quite a while. I've been traveling around the world, just got back from India, in fact, doing some speaking there. I've done it in India and helped a great English teacher of English there as well. And so that's enough about me. Let's get into some of the news today, the news story that we're going to discuss and read it and see what we can find out about it. And of course, as always, if you have any questions or comments, please feel free to post those on YouTube as we go through here, as go through the chat, or you can send an email to paul@growinenglish.com. All right, first up today, let's look at our news story as it begins this way. Headline, Dream Job, the Japanese man who gets paid to do nothing. This comes out of Tokyo. Shoji Morimoto has what some would see as a dream job. He gets paid to do pretty much nothing. The 38-year-old Tokyo resident charges 10,000 yen, that's about $71 per booking, to accompany clients and simply exist as a companion. Basically, he says, I rent myself out. My job is to be wherever my clients want me to be and to do nothing in particular, Morimoto told Reuters, adding that he had handled some 4,000 sessions in the past 4 years. So, as we read this in context, this Morimoto has said that this is his dream job. It's something he wants to do, and he's basically a companion renting himself out. And he's done it already for 4,000 sessions in the past 4 years. Well, let's pick out some things in this particular story that might be of interest. First of all, what is this business of a dream job? What is a dream job? Well, that's one of the things we'll look at here. A dream job is simply a job that's one where you have the opportunity to choose because it's good for you. It's not a job that you take out of want or need. It's not a job that your parents tell you that you have to take or someone else tells you that you have to take. If you can see this graphic over to the left, if you combine stuff you love to do along with stuff that you're good at and stuff that someone will be willing to pay you, if you can get all of those circles together, you'll come up with your dream job. So it's a job that you might choose for a lifetime rather than to use, say, for a stepping stone or going up the corporate ladder to another job. And it can be any job that's fun, involving your hobbies or things that are important to you. So a dream job is something that all of us would like to do, sort of like Morimoto, as he's here doing things that he says is nothing, but it is something to others. All right, let's move through the story a little more and look at the next section of this story. With a lanky build and average looks, Morimoto now boasts nearly 250,000 followers on Twitter, where he finds most of his clients. Roughly a quarter of them are repeat customers, including one who has hired him 270 times. That's good repeat business. His job has taken him to a park with a person who wanted to play on a seesaw. He has also beamed and waved through a train window at a complete stranger who wanted a send-off. A couple of things in this last particular paragraph. A seesaw, that's something that's all across the world. It's basically a child's toy. Some adults use it, obviously, in this story. One person sits on one end, the other person sits on the other, and they bounce back and forth. That's a seesaw. And then as it talks about, he also beamed and waved through a train window. It means he's looking through this train window and waving. So that maybe clears up a couple of things. But let's look at a couple of interesting words here that are in this. Lanky. What is lanky? Well, I'm going to spell these phonetically the best way that I can. I try to do useful phonetics, by the way. These may not be exactly proper, but it's a way that I hope will help us to learn how to pronounce them. Lanky. You have the word Ann, or the name Ann, and lanky. Lanky is really how you pronounce it. Lanky. It usually describes a person. In other words, you would not describe an animal as lanky. Someone usually who's thin and tall. It can also mean someone who walks around without purpose, casually. Maybe if you're, say, like a tourist in any given city. I mentioned a moment ago, I just got back from India just a handful of weeks ago. And you just can't help but be a tourist and look around, and, you're just shaking your arms back and forth, waving them back and forth as you're walking around. Well, I'm certainly not lanky, thin, and tall, but I was still looking like a tourist. So someone who's walking around without purpose, someone also who is not particularly dressed up. You wouldn't necessarily say someone who's dressed in a coat and tie would be lanky. You see the picture, by the way, on the left. This is Morimoto there on the right in the white T-shirt. Well, these both are his pictures, but you can see better the one with him with a cap and T-shirt, some jeans, a backpack there. Someone that might wear sweatpants or pajamas. That's someone who's lanky. There's another word here, roughly. Roughly. What does that mean? There's a couple of meanings to this word roughly. One thing that will give you some difficulty in English is the O-U-G-H, and it's pronounced different ways sometimes. But in this case, as you see the phonetic spelling on top, roughly. And in this case, it means close to or approximately. Close to or approximately. So roughly a quarter of them, 25% in other words, a quarter is 25. So 25% of his customers are repeat customers, which is pretty good, not too bad. So roughly, normally if you read the word roughly, it has to do with something that's rough to the touch, is not smooth. In other words, I remember shaking hands one time with an old farmer man. I used to do some farming. I'm here in the southeast United States a long time ago. I don't look much like a farmer now, but I remember shaking hands with a farmer, and his hands were calloused because of all the hard work that he'd been doing, and it was almost like sandpaper. So usually when you think about something that's rough or someone who is rough, it means that they're sometimes they're rough and tough. Maybe they have a big build or something like that, muscular. They look rough. You don't want to talk to them because you might be afraid of them. But in this case, roughly, like something rough around the edges. And it's an estimation, in other words, roughly a quarter, as we notice that. All right, let's move on to the next section. Doing nothing doesn't mean Morimoto will do anything. He has turned down offers to move a fridge and go to Cambodia, and doesn't take any request of a sexual nature. Last week, Morimoto sat opposite Aruna Chida, a 27-year-old data analyst, clad in a sari, S-A-R-I, having a sparse conversation over tea and cakes. Well, first of all, let's notice a couple of things as we talk about this. Obviously, Morimoto is saying he's not going to do everything that he's asked to do. He has turned some offers down. We'll talk about that in a minute. And then he doesn't take any request of a sexual nature. So there's nothing bad like that he's going to do. Now, a sari, S-A-R-I, is a clothing that Indian women would wear. If you know anything about India, one thing that they have is very beautiful clothing. The fabric is amazing, the very colorful clothing that they have. And so they will call it a sari, and that's something that is wrapped around them and worn. Let's look at some words here, though, that are of particular interest. The word fridge. What in the world is a fridge? Do you know what that is? Well, phonetically, this is how we're going to pronounce it and say it, like fridge. Fridge, the DG pronounces basically a J sound. Fridge, fridge. Well, that's short for refrigerator. Refrigerator. They'll call that a chiller in the Philippines. Other places in the world will call it a cooler. But a fridge is short for refrigerator. And it's just an easy way to say it. Another word that we see in this particular section is clad. Clad. Now, to be honest with you, we don't often use that word here in America that much. It's a good word, obviously, the reporter, and we get all of our news from fair use usage from Reuters. But clad simply means this as you look at this word. And first of all, phonetically, we would say clad. You know the word add, like addition? Clad, clad. To be clothed in a particular garment, and that's how that particular word is used, clad in something. All right, another word that we want to look at in this particular section, clad in a sari, so they were clothed in that particular outfit, the great colorful clothing of an Indian woman. Having a sparse conversation over tea. Well, you know, conversation is when you're speaking together with each other. What's a sparse conversation? A sparse conversation. Well, perhaps it's a new word for you. And we're going to spell it this way phonetically. Sparse. You see pars there. Sparse. Sparse. We're going to pronounce the S that way. Again, these are not always the easiest to spell phonetically, but I like to spell them in my own phonetic way so that you can understand it, use it. Sparse, sparse. Well, it means to be scattered, not near each other. So a sparse conversation actually would mean that they're not speaking very much, having a sparse conversation over tea and cake. So in other words, they're sitting there and they're eating tea and cakes and they're having this sparse conversation. They're mostly eating and drinking, and then once in a while they'll have something to say in this sparse conversation. Sparse, to be scattered, not near each other. All right, let's go to our next section as we look at this dream job for Mr. Morimoto. Chida, who's the Indian girl, wanted to wear the Indian garment, that's that sari that we spoke of, out in public, but she was worried it might embarrass her friends if she wore this native clothing. So she turned to Morimoto for companionship. With my friends, I feel I have to entertain them, but with the rental guy, Morimoto, I don't feel the need to be chatty, she said. Before Morimoto found his true calling, he worked at a publishing company and was often chided for doing nothing. Well, first let's go back up here to Chida and see what she says. She says here that she doesn't feel the need to be chatty. To be chatty. What is the word chatty? Have you ever heard that before? We're going to spell it this way, chatty, chatty, chatty. Well, to be chatty means to be very talkative, someone who's always talking all the time. Here in the United States, we would call someone a chatty Cathy, is someone that's always talking, and they're talking over someone, and they're not allowing others to speak. In fact, to be honest, let me look, make sure nobody's listening. I was at a gathering today, and there was, in fact, a chatty Cathy sitting at my table, and none of us could get a word in edgewise. So to be chatty is to talk so much. And that's exactly what Chida did not want to do. She said that she doesn't feel the need to be chatty. She wanted him for companionship, and she wanted him because she wanted to wear this native Indian garment, a sari, and she was worried it might embarrass her friends. But she did not feel the need to be chatty, to be talking all the time with him. That's why it says they had a sparse conversation. All right, another word here that's not really commonly used is chided. The word chided. What does this mean? Often chided for doing nothing, Morimoto was. Well, phonetically, we're going to spell it like this. Ch, you see the CH there, and then you know the word I, like your eyeball, chided. Well, to chide someone or to be chided means to scold or to get onto someone verbally. To chide someone would never involve physical discipline, but rather just verbal discipline. Maybe your parent would get on to you and say, don't do that, or clean up your room, or something like that. Maybe as a child you want to get into some cookies or something, and they would say, no, don't do that, don't spoil your dinner. Well, that's chiding someone, giving them some verbal discipline rather than physical discipline. And that's exactly what we find here. He says, Morimoto says, that he was often chided at work for doing nothing. Well, now he's got his dream job. All right, let's move on here to the final section of this story, and then we're almost finished. I started wondering what would happen if I provided my ability to do nothing as a service to clients, he said. The companionship business is now Morimoto's sole source of income, with which he supports his wife and child, although he declined to disclose how much he makes. He said that he sees about 1 or 2 clients a day. Before the pandemic, it was 3 or 4 a day. Well, that's not too bad, is it? To have those few, even a couple a day, but he's able to support his family with those very few that he has. All right, as we wrap up this English story and as we wrap up Grow in English Together, I want you to think about these words to remember. These are not all that we went through, but these words in particular, try to use them in a sentence if you can. The word lanky, someone who's tall and thin, dresses rather casually or informally, lanky. Look at that lanky man there. See what people say when you use that word. Clad, she's clad in a very nice dress. Again, that word is not really commonly used today, but if you want to see and see how others react when you act like you know a little English, it would be a good thing. Clad. She's clad in a very nice dress. And chatty. Oh, you can use that word very easily. There's a lot of people that are chatty. They're so chatty this morning. I've not had a cup of coffee yet. Chatty. So lanky, clad, and chatty. See if you can use those words sometime in the day today. Well, it is time for us to end the program. We've come to the end of the lesson and the end of today's program. Now, tomorrow, you'll not want to miss, we'll have another interesting news story for you as we help you to grow in English. This is Paul. Hope you have a great day or great night, as the case may be, wherever you are. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and we'll see you tomorrow with Grow in English with today's news.